Hey there, Derek Rydall here, founder of the Law of Emergence and author of the best-selling books Emergence and the Abundance Project. And I'm just a little bit glitched there. I think we're still live. I'm coming to talk today, and I'll be doing a series of additional talks about really how to win the war and to understand that the war is within us. And so it's really how do we win the war within us? And the first thing to understand is to win this war is to understand that we're not really in the world, but that the world is in us, that we're not really in relationships, but that all relationships are in us. And so everything that's happening in the seeming outer world and all the ways it's affecting us, it's allowing us to see where we're really living. When anything triggers us, as I like to say, we want to start to become trigger happy. We want to start to recognize that somebody says something, somebody does something, something happens, and I have a feeling, I have a sensation. We want to begin to practice bringing our attention to our bodies and to our hearts and notice, oh, the pain is in me. The sadness is in me, the grief, the anger, the fear, the doubt, the worry, the shame, the guilt. It's actually happening in me. Now, that doesn't mean we don't do anything. That doesn't mean we don't take actions and we don't, speak out and speak up and do what we can to right the wrongs of the world, of our family, of our relationships, etc. But it's about where is it coming from? If we don't know that actually what we're reacting to is a trauma, a pain, a shame, a guilt of our own belief, our own shadow, if we don't know that that's what's happening with us, and then we think it's about him or her or them or whatever condition, we then use other people and the world as a proxy to try to mitigate our own pain. We are projecting onto the screen of experience, onto our partner, onto our family, onto our parent, onto the government, onto a celebrity, and then we attack them, judge them, shame them, blame them, try to cancel them, try to hurt them, or try to get them, try to attract their attention, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't understand that it's all actually going on inside of us, and no amount of speaking up, speaking out, attacking, blaming, shaming, speaking truth to power, activism, or anything is ever going to solve the war, is ever going to end the conflict, or really solve the problem because it's going on primarily within us. But as we take responsibility, 100% responsibility for the world within us, then from a place of clarity, of inspiration, of love, of compassion, of wisdom, we can actually then take actions. We can speak. We can lead. We can actually then become a transformative agent in the world. Okay, so I wasn't going to talk about all that today. We're going to get more into that as the days and weeks go. But I want to speak specifically about a particular incident that it's been spoken about already ad nauseum, and that is the slap heard round the world with Will Smith and Chris Rock at the Oscars, the Academy Awards. But I want to try to speak from a different place than perhaps has been spoken about. So much has already been said, right? There's potentially other stuff going on between Will Smith and his wife and Chris Rock and Will Smith and a lot of that stuff that we're not privy to, or maybe you are, but it doesn't really matter. There's some fundamentals here that I want to talk about. And maybe you can say this is my opinion, but I don't think you will believe that by the end of this. And that is that uh, it's not okay to assault another individual because of words. Okay, let's just get the bottom line in place here. It's not okay to assault another individual because of words. We can also say it's not okay to insult another individual. And there's a spectrum here. Chris Rock is a comedian, and Chris Rock was doing his job, and it's there's a long line of comedians and the fool and the court jester whose job it is to actually roast the king or the queen or the court, right? There's an ancient lineage here, and there's a principle behind it, because through humor and through using the shadow and through poking at our own shadows and our own fears and our own cravings and aversions, the court jester, now the comedian, allows us to see ourselves and to bust through some of the armor of the ego and actually see and feel our own pain, our own limitation, our own limited perceptions, to humble us, right? And to show us, as Shakespeare said, to hold up a mirror. So that's actually the job of a comedian. So regardless of whether you agree or disagree, the irony is that what Chris Rock did was show both Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, and ultimately all of us, where we're really living. That's what I want you to get as the frame here, right? The job of the comedian, just as the job of all of life experience, as I started this conversation, is not is to show us where we're really living. Okay? And so however we react to something tells us way more about ourselves than it does about the thing. That's the big idea here. How we react tells us about ourselves more than it does about the thing itself. The action, the condition, is neutral. Now, again, I'm not saying some conditions aren't more destructive, less helpful, other conditions more constructive. I'm just saying the principle is how we react tells us about the world we're living in, not so much about the world out there or the other person. Okay? And that's the job of a comedian. That's the job of an artist, right? That's the job of individuals who are holding up a mirror to society in some way. So that's what happened. Whether you agree or disagree, he did his job, there was a reaction. And regardless of whether we even agree that it's right or wrong to assault the other person, what I want to talk about is the reaction. I want to talk about the reaction that Jada had, that Will had, and ultimately that you had, and that we all had. And the biggest thing I want to just talk about, because we've already, again, spoken about this a lot ad nauseum, but we talk a lot about toxic masculinity. And what you saw there was a sign of toxic masculinity. You saw one individual who was showing toxic masculinity and one individual who was showing a little more of man 2.0. And the toxic masculinity was coming from Will Smith. And Chris Rock showed enough composure and really showed what a real quote unquote man or the divine masculine is to do, which is to hold space even with the storm and to ultimately de-escalate the chaos. The masculine is order and structure. I don't mean men, I mean the masculine. Order and structure. It's supposed to hold the chaotic energy of life and allow it to become something more creative, something more productive, and less destructive. Okay? That's what the masculine is. Masculine is order. The feminine is pure creativity or chaos, is pure life force. And together, it creates this dance of creative chaos and greater order, creative chaos and greater order, the blooming lotus flower, life unfolding, life unfolding. Okay? So Chris Rock held the space while the chaos swirled, and Will Smith was not able to. Okay? Will Smith was not able to hold either his feminine in the form of his wife, who was giving him some looks, and he was not able to hold his own inner feminine or masculine in terms of, okay, I got some chaos going on inside of me. I'm angry. I'm scared. I'm going to get it from my wife, maybe. I got to show that I'm a man. I got to prove that I'm a good man, a strong man. I got to prove to my wife or to that part of me that is really a projection of my wife. I got to prove that I'm a real man, that I'm a good man, that I'm like King Richard, the guy I'm about to win an Oscar for. I got to prove. All of that battle is going on inside Will Smith, and it leaked out. And then he used Chris Rock as a proxy. Okay? And there's other things about potential relationships and affairs and all that, but it's all going on inside of them. and he was not able to hold himself. So I'm not making Will Smith wrong for his feelings, for having the fear, the anger, the doubt, or Jada Pinkett or anybody. That's called being human. The problem was he wasn't able to hold his place and hold that space and touch those parts of himself with compassion or wisdom or understanding. And instead, he projected it out in a moment of loss of control. And we had an assault, we had conflict, we had violence. Now, that's what's happening every day all over the world. And that's what's happening with us every day in little ways and big ways. We're not able to hold this place called our world. We're not able to be the king or the queen, a benevolent king or queen of the world within us. And because we can't be with some part of ourselves, a pain, a shame, a fear, a guilt, a doubt, etc., a feeling, because that's the only thing we fear is a fear of feeling. The only thing we're dealing with is trying to get rid of a feeling or get a better feeling. All 7+ billion of us, okay? That's all that's going on here. And so because he couldn't be with those feelings and because we can't be with those feelings, we act out, right? And behind those feelings are beliefs and stories and all of that, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And so we have the ultimate freedom and liberation and power is in our ability to be with those feelings, be with whatever's going on within us, and be able to consciously choose what we're going to respond to and what we're going to respond from. Okay. Now, the part that really I think is part of the zeitgeist right now that's so important is we've talked a lot about toxic masculinity. We talk a lot about, the Me Too movement. It's still very much alive. And it had a reason and a right and a purpose of existing because there is toxic masculine traits and behaviors. There's bad code in the system that men and even women pick up, act out, and so there's bad code and we have to call it out and we have to deal with it. But what we don't talk about, on the other hand, is the toxic femininity. And the toxic feminine was on display in this experience. And it was shown by the fact that I don't have the exact numbers, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50%, maybe even more, of women actually applauded Will Smith. Now, if you're a woman and you're listening, I want you to notice where this hits you. 40 to 50 or more percent of women were like, yay, great job, Will. I wish my man would stand up for me like that. I wish more men would stand up for women like that. Now, stay with me if this is triggering, because there is a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow here. Think about that for a minute. Now, probably most of you listening to me, unless this video gets shared around, are in agreement with the original statement that violence against words is not acceptable. It's not the same thing. To defend your wife against words, a joke, in fact, and even a very minor joke at that, and even a very minor issue with Jada Pinkett in the alopecia. Men are losing their hair all the time, and if you make jokes about them, do they get to punch you? I don't think so. And I'm not diminishing the pain that she might be experiencing from that. But to me, she looked like she was rocking it. And actually she was standing in her own confidence. She maybe not didn't like the joke, but she wasn't a victim. She wasn't acting like a victim, and she wasn't a victim. And that's not the same as, your partner is dying of cancer or they have a true disability and somebody's making fun of them. But I will say even then, violence is never the answer to that. There are people literally defending their family from bombs right now. And so there is a place where self-defense is appropriate, at least at the level of consciousness we're at right now. You could say eventually there is no place for that, because when you really realize we're all one, when you actually embody that, you will not hurt another individual no matter what, because that would be the same thing as hurting yourself. But we're not there, and that's fine. If somebody comes after my child or my wife, literally, physically, I'm going to get between them, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to protect them. That's okay, that's natural. But that's not the same as violence and assaulting for words, okay? And many bar fights have been started and people have been killed because men didn't like the way somebody was looking at them or looking at their partner, and they have gone to battle in the bar or in the back alley, and somebody ends up getting hurt, disabled, or dead. And in other streets and urban environments, there's guns involved and people end up getting shot. And then you just expand that same premise and you see violence and conflict and war, right? What about in a relationship when your partner says words you don't like? Do you get to hit them? I hope you don't think so. So why would it be okay to hit somebody else? So just want to make sure, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I want to be very clear. There is never a justified right to assault another individual because of words. Now, if you don't agree with that and you can't see that that extrapolates out into all kinds of, ultimately, most violence starts with something that does not require violence. Okay. And it just ends up becoming, and it eventually does use bullets and does use bombs and does use other forms, but it starts almost all acts of violence that have gotten into wars and domestic abuse and violence in our streets all start because somebody is feeling something that they can't be with. I want you to really get that idea. Whether it's a war on the world stage or a war in the city streets or a war in your family that leads to violence, it almost always starts with words or with some action that doesn't directly hurt a person, but it hurts their feelings, or it scares them, or it makes them feel unimportant or unvalued or threatened in some way. It almost always starts with a feeling somebody can't be with, and then that leads to some ramped up expression of violence. Okay, so for these 30, 40, 50 plus percentage of women that are saying, good job, Will, how many of those women are also saying, bad man, bad toxic masculinity on the other side? And how many understand that you can't have it both ways? You can't applaud one act of violence because it suits you in this moment. And I'm going to get to the deeper what's really going on here. You can't applaud that act of toxic masculinity. And then when that same man or a different man who doesn't have control over their own feelings of adequacy and worth and value ends up assaulting a woman for much the same reason, by the way, just in a very different financial, economic, or otherwise environment, ends up assaulting a woman, it's the same thing happening as it is with a man whose pride or ego is bruised and he has to protect his woman or show that he's a stronger man up to another man. It's the same kind of energy. It is the toxic masculinity. It is the masculine energy, which the shadow of the masculine is powerlessness, is annihilation. And when the masculine feels powerless and it doesn't understand what that's really about, that it is supposed to be annihilated so that it can be reborn again and again, it's going to lash out. It's going to attack the woman. It's going to attack the man. It's going to attack the planet. You understand? So if you condone Will Smith or any man doing an act of violence because their own pride, because their own ego, because their own need to prove that they're a knight in shining armor or a good man or a better man or a strong man, you are approving of the man that also attacks women, of the man that beats up his wife in domestic abuse because he can't be with his own shame, and of the man that rapes and pillages the earth because he has to prove how powerful and strong he is and build a sense of worth and value by accumulation. You are approving all of that. And I would imagine if you're one of them, you're like, no, I ain't. Well, then you have to take a deeper look. And also, I want you to also understand the impact on men. If men are hearing 45 to 50% of women going, great job, Will. What's the message to men? Get out there and start slapping other men. Start standing up and assaulting more people to prove that you're a good man. Now, you may not think that's the message, but that's the message. The message is escalate, don't de-escalate, which is what Chris Rock did. The message is prove to women that you can protect them. The message is you're not able to protect them, most of you men. You're weak. You're shameful. What do men who feel weak and shameful do? You think they protect more women? No. They attack more men and women. They ultimately shoot up schools. They ultimately become terrorists. We really have to think more deeply. Now, here's the deeper issue, is that women are suffering from a lack of the divine masculine in this world, meaning strong masculine, not macho, but a man, or in same-sex situations, it could be a woman, it could be men and women, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, the masculine being solid within itself, himself enough that he can hold the feminine, as I said earlier, that he can hold the chaos, he can hold the turbulence, he can hold the storm, he can hold the raw life force and creative energy of the feminine and not try to repress it, not try to burn it at the stake, not try to make it bad, not try to control it, not dominate it, not rape and plunder it, whether it's the feminine or the planet, it's the same energy, but actually can hold it because he's not afraid of his own annihilation. He's not afraid. He understands that the annihilation allows for him to become more, not less. That strength of the masculine is what the feminine is crying out for. And they're right to cry out for. And they're right to call forth. Come on, men, stand up. But that, what we saw, is not a display of the kind of masculine women really are crying out for. Not violence, strength. Strength of character, strength of heart, a heart of gold and a soul of steel, and a sword of truth. A man like Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi, not a man like John Wayne. Okay? That's what we need more of. Now, I'm not saying they can't be, I don't know, something like Hugh Grant. I mean, not Hugh Grant, what's his name? The actor that played Wolverine. He's a very strong, masculine man, but he's also got an incredible heart and soul, and is an individual who is, I think, an example in the celebrity world. And I actually think Will Smith is too, or at least is endeavoring to. And this, he had a soul contract with us, I guess, to play this part out. But the point is, strong masculine is not that can attack or destroy, control, repress, subdue. We've already seen that for thousands of years. The strong masculine is the one that can hold and hold anything without collapsing or contracting or trying to merely control. So that's what women, and because what that does is it allows the feminine to feel free and safe enough to flower, to expand, to open. And what many women are crying out for is to be able to finally feel safe and free enough to be all that they are as the feminine, rather than to have to take on the masculine themselves and be controlling and be rigid because there's not enough structure or other men or individuals that can create the masculine so that they can relax into it. Now, ultimately, it's all of our jobs to do that within ourselves. But I want to, I have compassion and understanding for the women that are like, yay, Will Smith, we need more of that, because they don't feel safe inside. They haven't felt held. They haven't felt supported, right? They've felt judged. They've felt taken advantage of, and they haven't felt the safety and the strength of the divine masculine to hold them so that they could fully flower as the divine feminine. And so they're crying out for that. But what they're going to get from that place is more toxic masculinity. Okay. And likewise, the men who are like, yeah, Will Smith, and you see this a lot of athletes and, certain people that are like, yeah, I would do the same, man. And, got to protect your woman and all that. And they're just playing that same old code. And because they want to prove that little boys want to prove they're strong men. And there's a lot of little boys running around in men's bodies. And they want to prove that they're knights in shining armor and that they're good, that they're virtuous, that they're chivalrous, that they're knights, right? That they're soldiers, that they're warriors. Now, the warrior energy and the soldier energy and the knight energy are real archetypes, and they have value, they have purpose. Right now, over in the Ukraine, we need some knights, and we need some truly chivalrous soldiers. And we have some. And so, or in the police force, you see a lot of the toxic masculinity, but what we need is more of, and probably we do have more of it, we just don't see it, of the chivalry and of the true protector energy, the true protector and provider and defender of innocence, right? And of innocent beings. But that type of individual is not going to escalate violence, is not going to attack because of words, is not going to have the need to prove anything to themselves or anybody else. When the masculine doesn't have to prove anything to anybody, then he can utilize the warrior and the defender and the protector and the provider in a way that does not destroy, in a way that is sustainable, in a way that supports and protects so that more life can flourish, not less. Does that make sense? And that's the same with the feminine. And so really what we're in is a conversation of the right understanding of the masculine and the feminine and how they're both living inside of us and how we need to take full responsibility for our projections. And what you're seeing online and all the polarization, not just here, but we've been seeing it for years, is the friction of the fictions, the projections of unreconciled and unhealed aspects of ourselves. And so I'm speaking to you in hopes that some of you will begin to take on the challenge and the great mission of taking 100% responsibility for yourselves, for all of your thoughts and all of your feelings, and know that nobody can make you feel anything and nobody can make you do anything. And to take that power back and to heal and win the war within yourself, first and foremost. And as you do, as you listen to the parts of you crying out and you meet their deepest needs, and you become in service of the full flourishing of your own being, not making it anybody else's responsibility, and you forgive and release the world from owing you anything, you now reclaim your divine sovereignty. You now activate your greater agency. You now can become a light in the world and become the change you want to see, and watch as the miracle unfolds and the violence and the conflict and the lack starts to dissolve in your life, in your circle of influence. And you become a beneficial presence to all that you touch. And if you do that, then you are lifting up the other 10 people around you. And then if one of them does that, they lift up the other 10 people around them. And then as one by one and two by two, we are winning the war within ourselves and going out into the world, in our homes, in our businesses, in our communities, and becoming the answer and becoming the light and becoming these compassionate advocates. We will lift up the world. I'm telling you, that's the only way we'll change the world. Not by assaulting anybody, not by slapping anybody, not by hurting anybody, not by acting out our own unhealed traumas. So I hope this is interesting to you. This was longer than I thought it would be. I really invite you to share this. Um, you know, check out my podcast for other stuff. Check out my YouTube channel for other stuff. But share this if you believe this conversation is important. And share also what happens as you begin to practice this and look for more. And until next time, remember to live authentically, love unconditionally, and follow your destiny. Take care, everybody.